Welcome, everybody. This is our typical Friday Tiara Facebook Live, and we're very excited today because we're going to be talking about leadership development. So we're thrilled for you to either be with us live or joining later and seeing it on the stream. I'm Peg Rowe, and I'm one of the global leaders for Tiara International, and we have the privilege today of having two really extraordinary leaders who are joining us for this conversation as we talk about both leadership development and also their experience participating in our Tiara Leading with Impact program. So on this session with us are Stacee Hasenbalg, who is the General Counsel and Chief Compliance Officer for Beyond Finance. That's a mouthful. And then also Maggie Walsh, who's VP of Strategic Pursuits. See, I'm going to just like fumble all of those, and she's with HDR. And I also have with us today Ruske, who's another one of the Tiara managing partners. So the four of us will be having what we hope is a lively conversation about both leadership development and sort of what's the state of leadership development these days, as well as the Tiara Leading with Impact program and what it offers to women leaders specifically. So as we get ready to jump in, I just want to remind everybody that Tiara does these Facebook Live events every single Friday at 12 noon roughly Central Time, and you're certainly welcome to join us. And if you are part of our Facebook group and like us, then you'll get all the announcements and you'll know when they're coming up, and they're different topics every week. So I thought it would be a great idea, Stacee and Maggie, because both of you are, authentic and powerful leaders, for you to share a little bit about your leadership journey, just sort of what's gotten you to this point in your career, just so that everyone who's listening in has a sense of sort of who you are and how you've gotten to where you've gotten to. And then we'll dive in more specifically on leadership development and then ultimately leading with impact. So Stacee, why don't we start with you? Just give us a thumbnail of what your career has been, because it's interesting.
So I have been in financial services for over 25 years. I started out in traditional banking and was at a global international bank for 20 years and decided that I needed something different. Didn't quite know what that was at the time, which was how I got involved with Tiara and the Leading with Impact program. I knew I was stuck. And I knew I had more to offer, but I didn't quite know how to get it out there and make the next move. So after joining with Leading with Impact, I found the courage to make a move from a 20-year traditional type job with a traditional up the ladder to a fintech startup, into the C-suite there, and have had the pleasure of working at two now, and with millennials, building something from the ground up and taking leadership positions in those companies.
Yeah, so for clarification for folks who might not be into some of the tech, shorthand and terminology, fintech stands for financial technology?
It does.
It does, okay. And so that's really an emerging area of the financial services arena that's done virtually, not in the sort of the more traditional banking environment. So there's a lot of movement and a lot going on in that particular arena. And it's a really big growing area for financial services.
It is. It's your online lending, online mortgages, and that type of thing. Great.
So Maggie, would you do the same? Share with us a little bit about your career trajectory and sort of what you've done. And you've done this in you've done the work that you do and have grown by, moving through other companies as well.
Right. So thank you both for inviting me to join all of you and Tiara Consulting. It's just a pleasure to be here with all of you, including you, Stacee, since we did Leading with Impact together.
Same here.
So quick little summary about my career. I think I got the bug to travel early on in life, and I did quite a lot of that. And most significantly, it started right after college when I moved myself up to Canada and lived in Quebec City because I didn't know the French language. So I was disappointed in the fact that I didn't know that, so I took the initiative and learned that language. That took me to France, and in France, one Saturday afternoon, I got the opportunity to kayak in the channel, or in the
Yeah.
in the area, and I kayaked over the tunnel that took you from France to England. And I was fascinated with that, and thought that there was a lot of neat opportunities around this thing called transportation. And so after that little bug, I moved myself to Boston, thinking that that was going to be like the end of all ends, living in this amazing city called Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And I got my start into the transportation industry. And with that, I have grown tremendously in so many ways, both personally and professionally, because I've been given opportunities to live in Boston, to live in Chicago, to live in the Middle East, all with areas that have grown my career. I do strategic planning, I've done marketing, business development, consulting, project delivery. So I've learned a lot through all of that, just from, I guess, my interest in traveling. It's really just taken me in a lot of places. And I think the thing about the transportation industry is that it is for everyone. It's not just civil engineers, it's scientists, economists, planners, business people, any lawyers. We've got it all, and I think because of that, it makes all that I do in my world that much more invigorating, because of all the interaction I have across the board.
Yeah, I mean, I love for both of you that you have been bold in your willingness to step out and try something new and go someplace different and give it a whirl, and just kind of let your curiosity in a way take you where you want to go. Let's explore a little bit about leadership itself. So the first question I would ask is, did you always consider yourself a leader? Like, what was the evolution that had you recognize, like, oh, I'm actually a leader here? Stacey, you want to try?
Sure. So, and when you were just saying how bold we've been in taking risks, I mean, that really has been an evolution for me, as well as finding my own voice as a leader. Taking a risk was not something that I was used to doing in my career. I kind of sat back, and maybe being a lawyer had something to do with that. There's a pretty standard rise when you're a lawyer. In a law firm, you're an associate, you rise to partner, and you kind of wait for things to happen to you and wait for people to evaluate you. And that was kind of the structured mindset that I took. And it really never occurred to me that leading was part of that, or making a move and taking risks on my own was something that would get me further. But I think I started to feel my own career was stuck in waiting around for other people. And I was very conflicted, because I felt like that wasn't how I should feel. That wasn't how it should go. If I was good at what I was doing, I should just be moving up. And that wasn't what was happening. And I had to really change my mindset about what success meant, how to get there, what risk taking meant, what risks were right for me, what I was comfortable with. But the whole time I had a group of women, particularly women. I led women at work. Interestingly enough, all the teams that I have led have been female, and they were all very supportive about my leadership capabilities, and were very loyal, very dedicated, and we accomplished some great things. And I found that that was really what gave me pleasure in coming to work, was the leadership, the people aspect, making a difference and giving people an opportunity. Stepping back and watching them grow was really something that I liked. And that's what I wanted to be in a position to do more of, and kind of move up the ladder to pay it forward a little bit for folks who needed that push. And that, to me, was really what made the job most interesting. It was like the icing on the cake for the job.
Mm-hmm.
Stacey, let me ask you this. Let me just jump in.
Sure.
Stacey, let me ask you, that's a point in your career that leadership emerged for you, but throughout your life, as you think back as a younger woman, maybe even in college, what did you think about yourself? Did you classify yourself as a leader? Were you, how did you look at leadership, and how did you compare yourself to that measure?
So I don't know that I thought of it as leadership back then. I knew I was different. So even in going to college, I did not want to stick around home. I went to college in the Midwest. I'm originally from Los Angeles. I didn't know anybody there. I kind of jumped right into it. It was like one of the best off-the-wall decisions that I had ever made, to just put myself in the middle of Indiana for college, coming from Los Angeles. It opened my mind. I always knew I was different and wanted different things and wanted to control my destiny. I came from a household of traditional father, mother, and my mom stayed home and my dad went to work every day. And I think that's what they expected me to accomplish out of life. And I knew I wanted to write my own checks, support myself, decide what I wanted to do. And that wasn't what I was seeing my mother able to do. So I wanted a career, and I decided not to pursue family and kids. I don't have children. And that was a choice of mine. So I always knew I was different, but I didn't really think of how that played into leadership until I was actually working at that career.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm just going to pause here and say, for those of you who may have joined us a little bit late, we are in a great conversation with Stacee Hasenbalg and Maggie Walsh about leadership and leadership development, and sort of where all that fits. And then ultimately we're going to talk about the Tiara Leading with Impact program, but we're kind of laying the groundwork right now for this whole conversation about being a leader and seeing yourself as a leader, and then, how do you really step into leadership development? So Maggie, I'm going to go back to you and just say, at what point did you see yourself as a leader? When did that really emerge for you, that you recognized, I'm a leader?
Yeah, I've given some thought to that. Two things. One, I remember a principal saying, if you want to have a fulfilling life, get involved. And so I took that to heart, and I always was involved in something. Sports, organizations, family, friends, and my job, extracurricular activities outside of work, anything. I just always wanted to be involved. And I think because of all that involvement, I met a lot of people. I was asked to, work on something that gave me skills that allowed me to move up in my leadership space, which I think is where I got to in some of this, where because of all the involvement I've had in so many different things, I think I ended up having a support network that says, hey, you actually could step into these roles, and they've opened the doors and let me step through. So I think getting involved was a big message that I heard early on. And the other thing is that I find myself by myself in certain situations, like moving to different countries. So I've done that 4 or 5 times, and I'm all by myself. And so the only person that's going to be able to really get through where I am and figure it out is me. And so because it's me, I had to really understand what it meant to take self-initiative and make a situation as fulfilling as possible, and to really embrace all that it had to offer. And usually with that approach, I met a lot of great people who also showed me the way of anything. So I think that those two things, getting involved and really just realizing that it's up to me to take the initiative, really has given me, sort of found a foundation of some of the leadership that I've taken on now.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I hear that theme from both of you. It's like both of you somewhere along the line put a stake in the ground and said, no matter what, I'm going to be responsible for me, and I'm taking charge of my life. And that's kind of interesting for me because in Tiara, we talk about everyone is a leader of their own life, and you really emulate that. The way you describe, that point for you is really the essence of what we're thinking of when we say we all have to lead our own lives and we're all responsible for that. And both of you made, very concerted decisions and very definite decisions like, okay, this is my life and I'm in charge and I want it to be the way I want it to be, which might not have looked like anything that had been modeled for you, which I always think is interesting. I mean, Stacey, you said earlier, like it took you something to learn to take risks. Actually, I saw your earlier decision of moving away from LA, really claiming for yourself what you wanted in your career. That was a bold risk to really say, I'm not going to do what's been modeled. I'm going to do what feels right for me. So both of you have been that, sort of self-aware individual who's really declared for yourself what you want. Yeah.
Peg. Oh,
go ahead, Maggie.
I was just going to follow up to say, while it's all up to me and the self-initiative, I am driven by, or I get my energy from other people.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to be around other people in order to also, go forward and execute. So while it's up to me, I do have that sense of need for other people to be around. And so it's a very group or collective and not an alone space. Like I might be on myself, put the pressure on me to make the initiative, but I want other people to go along with me. So
well, and that's part of that self-awareness for you.
Yeah.
It's like you are someone who likes to be, in a group, in a community, if you will, and connected with others. And that's really knowing yourself as well. Like if you take that bold move and you move somewhere across the world, then how do you create that community and connection for yourself? Because that's important for you. Beth, you were starting to say something.
Yeah, Peg, we're talking about everyone's a leader in their own life, and that's a clear distinction and a belief inside of
Right.
Tiara, and you both are, embodying that. And you're also talking about the awareness and taking personal responsibility. That's another key distinction inside of Tiara about how do we actually give ourselves permission to take personal responsibility, because it's not going to look the same for everybody. It's going to look unique to you. So taking that responsibility, like if your life isn't turning out great, well, guess whose issue that is? And if it is turning out the way you intend, awesome. But it's about you taking the initiative, you taking that responsibility. And you both emulate that so well.
Yeah, and actually that leads me to the next point, which is really about taking responsibility for our own growth and development. One of the things that certainly in the work that Beth and I do with organizations, we see more and more organizations adopting this theme that says you need to be responsible for your own career. To your point earlier, Stacey, it's not just sit and wait and hope that somebody, taps you on the shoulder and says, great, here's the next opportunity. And so everyone's being urged to do that whole thing of be responsible. And what comes along with that is then thinking about, well, how do I want to grow and develop, and how do I want to move forward, and what will serve me in doing that? So I'm curious about how each of you thinks about growth and development. So Maggie, I'm going to start with you. When you consider growth and development, what comes to mind for you, and how have you considered that throughout your career?
So recently, Peg and Beth and Stacey, I have been honored to step into a chair position for WTS International. This organization stands for Equity and Access for All Women in the Transportation Industry. Yeah. And I'm currently serving as the chair of the board of directors. This position is making me grow and develop like and it's exciting. So I've had very, very fulfilling career where I have had several promotions, and I've done some really interesting things with my career. And now I'm in a new challenge of leading a 7,000 person organization that has so much momentum, so much passion, so much interest. And so I challenge my own self in professional growth and development on making sure that I am a leader that really moves the organization to where our members want to be part of. So when I think of growth and development, I think of a very, very alive situation today, right now.
Excellent, excellent. And Stacey, how about you? How have you sort of managed yourself through the professional development, maze, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, what I've found is that it's a continuing journey. Like you never stop developing.
Mm-hmm.
It's, at one point in your career, you're focusing on one piece and then you get comfortable with that about yourself and, then you move on to something else and it's some other thing that you need to grow into or that you're faced with a challenge. So, I mean, I think early on in my career, I think confidence was something that I was focusing on and a need to feel confident to take risks and that I could lead. And I, worked through that with lots of, challenges in my career, just moving jobs and finding out that I can I can make it in whatever I put my mind to doing and that I'm good at it and that I can lead teams and build things from the ground up. And so now I think more of my development has been focusing on how do I get my message out there? How do I feel like I'm valued and contributing? I'm able now, at the senior level of the company to contribute and be heard. And that's something that I would not have envisioned early on in my career, let alone, 10 years ago. So it's a constant journey, constant learning. And I think the way I have come to view it is that, you shouldn't feel afraid to fail as you're learning and developing because you learn things, whether you know it at the time or not. You come back to rely on the things you've learned. And when you take risks and change jobs or take risks with new projects, you really do learn that, what's the worst that can happen to me? Actually, I may come out of it much better than I started. And you grow from that. So I have found that learning to take risks and being comfortable has really opened doors with what I feel that I can do and what I actually can accomplish.
You guys are actually describing, both of you, like the willingness to push yourself to, that edge of, Peg likes to say to go from the comfort zone to the stretch zone as opposed to the panic zone, right? But the comfort zone is one thing, but you guys are talking about living in that stretch zone. Mm-hmm. So it's a slightly different question for you both that I have is, we know that really great leaders are also vulnerable. They're authentic. They're themselves, which clearly you extraordinary women are. But there's also I think there's this risk people feel, or this fear, I'll even put the word fear on it, that if I'm vulnerable or if I talk about my areas of weakness or the areas I'm supposed to grow and develop in, or if I say I'm in a leadership program, that actually takes away from my strength. How do you guys react to that?
I know I did encounter that early on when I asked for coaching help. And at the time I had a male boss who felt like it would make me look weak. So I went out and did it on my own, and then later came back to the company, and the company said, no, that's absolutely not how we as a company feel. That may have been how that person felt, but it does not make you weak. And I guess I myself found that it was extremely empowering to get help, to actually show yourself as vulnerable. It actually empowered me, showing that, this is who I was, this is what I need help with. And it allowed me to have conversations with people who reported to me, knowing that they were probably feeling some of the same things, and encourage them to get help. The earlier the better in their career, particularly women, because you find that so many women in particular are feeling the same way, are wondering what the next step is, and have the same confidence concerns or lack of risk, or feeling like there are no options out there for them. And actually you end up supporting each other and I think benefiting from it. So actually tuning into who I was, what my strengths were as well as my weaknesses was actually one of the most empowering things I ultimately got my head around.
Maggie, your thoughts?
So I feel like I'm in a highly vulnerable state a lot right now, being in the position that I'm in, both at HDR, where I'm asked to really help teams get around a strategy position and secure some really important work in order for us to sustain some of our business models. And I'm feeling very vulnerable in the WTS Board of Director role, serving as the chair, where all eyes are on me. And when you're in those positions, people usually don't hold back on sharing with you when you are not performing the way they want you to. And you don't get as many kudos when you're in these positions. So just taking a step back and just when I think about some of the comments I'm getting or feedback I'm getting back, rather than taking it as criticism, I'm taking it as my communication style, and then rethinking, okay, the next day I need to follow up with a different type of communication style to give them something that they will receive if they don't feel that they're getting something in return. And so it's helped me actually grow a lot for communicating the vast amount of information I'm undergoing right now and trying to get out. So it forces me to use different styles and tools and language and words and all that, more phone calls, PowerPoint presentations to explain an entire concept, different things like that, that really push me. So that's how I feel very vulnerable, but I'm also trying to take every feedback into a space of, it's not me that the criticism is coming from. It's kind of more like, I'm trying to understand, I'm trying to work with what you're offering, I'm just not getting it. So challenge myself on that.
Yeah, in listening to both of you, I think one of the things that is striking for me is that it's a really interesting juxtaposition between being vulnerable on one side, but also that sort of inside out work of having the self-confidence and the self-awareness to know yourself so that you can actually be vulnerable because you're really grounded in who you are authentically as a leader. And that really allows you to say, oh, I may not know everything, or maybe I didn't communicate as clearly, or maybe there's something here I didn't consider, and not feel sort of destroyed by that, but to be able to just put it in the mix and say, okay, great, so now what do I need to do and move forward? Beth, what are your insights?
Yeah, I think it's really important. And I love, Stacey, that in your example, you talked about, because the older model, the masculine model, is really one of, don't let them see you sweat, right? Mm-hmm. Fake it till you make it. While there's truth in that, because we want to push ourselves, it's not a one size fits all, but we know that your most inspirational leaders are the ones who are people. They're people first. Yeah. And that's what's great about the Tiara model for true leadership, is that at the heart of it, we all have to be tuned into who we are, what our inspiration is, because as leaders, if we're not tuned into that, we use the word influence and power. We're talking about using your power to influence as opposed to direct and control and manage. And people who can influence, like you saying, Maggie, they're okay with all kinds of different feedback. It comes from so many different places. You're not taking the shots. You're wearing you take the feedback that you're supposed to take and you let go of the rest, but you grow. So I really do appreciate weaving both, both of you in your experiences here. It really enlightened our leadership model about awareness and producing results and influence and inspiration and having it all come together in a way that works for you. That's what's so important.
I was thinking about just what you've been saying, and just this week I had a really challenging conversation, and all I thought about was, how did I learn from Tiara on to navigate this? I seriously was just thinking, how did I learn from Tiara to navigate this conversation that was really challenging, and really taking what we spent many months in Leading with Impact, really understanding how to be self-aware and to use that influence in a positive way to get through some of these really challenging situations. I know I wouldn't have been able to do it without that training.
Yeah, so this is a great transition into your experience in the Leading with Impact program. And I think one of the things that Beth and I are both curious about is when you decided to take the leap and do Leading with Impact, what had you actually at that moment in your career be thinking about, maybe there's something else to do, maybe there's some other leadership development that I ought to be looking at? What was kind of going on that made that a question and then made sort of Leading with Impact the answer, if you will?
Well, for me at the time, I was coming off of a work relationship with an executive that whose business I had been supporting for many years, did not have a good relationship with him, had a lot of difficult meetings, and this lasted for several years. So it was a very difficult time in my career, and I knew I wanted to move out of that. And so I was looking at other opportunities still within the company that I was working for, the bank I was working for. And my goal, I knew I wanted a different job. I knew that was my goal. But I also felt like I didn't quite know what I was about, like what was authentically me, what had been perhaps bad habits or defense mechanisms that I had developed in dealing with this executive that I wanted to shake, and then what was authentically me that I wanted to bring forward. So for me, the beginning of the program was just to figure out what I was all about and to manage my way through a transition that I knew I wanted to make. And since then, I have continually drawn on the program and the techniques and the awareness that I developed in the program to transition through, at least 2 other jobs since then with completely different goals in mind, and to be able to, much easily and quickly discern like what is a healthy and authentic, job relationship for me, and what fits and what doesn't.
And Maggie, how about you? Where were you when you were making the choice to step into Leading with Impact?
I was moving back from the Middle East. And, I honestly, I know we kind of joke about it, but I was moving back from the Middle East, and I knew I was in this huge transition of, these extraordinary transitions that I was taking on. And in fact, Tiara has been there with me through many of my extraordinary transitions. Leading with Impact was one of my last ones. And really knowing that I would need to challenge myself on what was going to be next after this extraordinary opportunity living in the Middle East and then coming back to sort of, not necessarily the old ways, but, a familiar space. There wasn't going to be as much excitement of new, but I needed to create a new for me. And so I think that's what, to keep me motivated and inspired. That was the reason by jumping into Leading with Impact. I think it's a great program for when you want to take a new start, make a transition positive. I know there's lots of different types of transitions out there, and sometimes we use the word transition in a negative. It feels negative, like it was bad, and so now I got to transition to something good. And this feels like I want to transition from something good and still stay in the good. And so I think this program, Leading with Impact, the fact that it's 8 to 10 months, really allows you to get into a space of effective and positive transition. For me.
Maggie, you're reminding me of a phrase I like to say, and that is, be happy or get happy. And, the be happy is, I want to be happy in what I'm doing in my role. And can I do that here? Right? And if I can't, then what do I have to do to get happy? And is that here, or is that something more or different or bigger for me? So the thing about Leading with Impact that you guys are both referring to, this transition is great, but we also find that leaders who are in in their positions for a while are trying to figure out, like, what is next for me? Or how do I show up differently? The whole company knows me as this way forever.
Yeah.
But that's this much of me. How do I bring all of me now? And I love that you guys have been able to make the transition. Let's call transition a good word, Maggie.
Mhm.
You know, the funny thing is, I think they use the word transitions a lot for rehab centers. So
Yeah.
we have the rehab of leadership.
It's rejuvenation, right?
There
It's
you
keeping
go.
us fresh, keeping us alive.
Exactly right.
So because people
Exactly
are
right.
looking at, we're not looking at, but people are looking to us for even some mentoring or their own professional development. And if we're not in a space that is, a space of leading, shame on us.
Yep.
Yeah, shame on
That's a
us.
Yeah.
huge responsibility as leaders. You know, you really do have to take care of yourself, and you don't have to be so far ahead of people. You need to be a half step. We like to say you just need to be a half step ahead so people can know where you're going and where to go with you. And that is about awareness too. It's about your own development, taking care of yourself. You know, there's a lot of questions I have there in terms of how you do that, but I'm sure we'll touch on that in a second.
Well, I'm curious from both of you, as a result of participating in Leading with Impact, and I really love that you pointed the fact that it is a long program, and that's by design. It's really designed to support that kind of growth and development that doesn't happen in 6 weeks, and you try things on and you absorb them and you experiment, and then you come back and think about how did that go, and then you sort of add the layers of learning into that experience. So it really means that length of time allows you to be supported as a leader who is growing and really trying some new stuff. So what did you find as you reflect back has shifted in the way that you lead? What is changed or different about how you lead now?
For me, I don't know that it has shifted. I've become more confident in how I do it. And I don't know that I've shifted how I do it. I have just not been afraid to do it. And I've also become more aware that, the people who report to me, I mean, they notice what I'm doing. I don't think a lot of leaders really recognize the symbol that they are to the rest of their team and sometimes the rest of the company. And I've been in situations where, at least in my past 2 jobs, I've been the only female in the C-suite. And that wasn't, by design. That's how that turned out. But I don't think in the beginning I really recognized how many eyes were on me, especially the female eyes. They weren't open. Like, people were not, in fact, I was surprised. Women were not coming up to me with questions or asking me to mentor them. But I did feel and know that they were always watching. It made them feel comfortable that there was a woman in the boardroom all the time. And, in jobs that I have left in those situations, women came up to me afterward and said, it made us feel comfortable that you were there. It felt like we didn't have to worry about it because we knew you were standing up for what, we were all about. And if you're not there, we feel differently. So there's much more of a responsibility to it, especially when you're a woman in a particularly mostly male-led company. There's more of a responsibility than I thought, but I also feel like I was completely and am completely up for that challenge. I find it exciting. I find it a real place where I can, be myself as well as express my opinion. And so I have only been energized in those situations that I really can do what I came to the company to do. But it is a really big responsibility, especially when you're a woman in that type of situation.
Yeah, you're really ready. What I hear in that is like, you're ready. It's like all eyes are on you, and that's okay. And you are willing to own and take on the mantle of being that role model and being there and visible and accessible for women who, that saying of you can't be what you can't see, you're that occupying that space where they can see that as possibility for themselves, which is really remarkable.
Yeah, and I think in terms of how my leadership had changed, it's gone from just looking at my team to now kind of looking at the company. How can I lead and influence the company more generally, rather than just a specific subset of that?
Yeah, so you're really expanding in that whole arena of influence, which often is the sort of the last area to conquer, if you will. But that feels like that's become very natural for you, just to be thinking in those larger terms about where your influence goes, not only within the company, but within the board of directors, within shareholders, way beyond just like what's immediately in front of you. Yeah. Maggie, how about you?
So I've been thinking about that word shift, and what Leading with Impact really kind of nurtures you to do. We have this, we're all women trying to create influence and impact. Your program is called Leading with Impact. And we're still often few and far between with the females up in these senior level positions. And so I know I'm driven with, there are a lot of women out there and they are doing great things. I see them every single day, and they're and they're executive levels. But why do we still have this feeling in so many industries that we don't have enough, or there's just not enough, or we're in these rooms and we're only one or two, and it just, so I'm really trying to partner with the other genders to really understand, like, why are we still in this position? I mean, I feel like, why am I paving the path? I think I should be widening the path. All those amazing women before me have been paving. I want to widen, and we're still in that paving. And so, so I feel like, listening to Stacee, I agree with her on everything she said. I feel in many ways very similar in what you said, Stacee. But I feel like the shift for me is that it's still happening, or it needs to happen. And I'm using this guidance that I've been given to try to get there and really maybe demonstrate that we're actually there, we're present, we make a difference. The balance of decision when you have all genders in the room or at the table or what have you is so much better. And I think all genders know that. So, but we're still underrepresented in some way.
You're describing for me inclusivity, Maggie. And it's another thing about leaders, that really great leaders are inclusive, and it doesn't matter what level you're talking about being inclusive, but they're just inclusive. And I do like what you're describing in terms of, it isn't so much, it's like there's an energy around the world, I think, for people to want to feel, we don't want to strive anymore. We want to just claim the space. And that's the phrase I have for you two, as an observer for you over the last few years, is you've claimed your space. You've claimed your seat. You've claimed your space. And being the great leaders that you are, you are paving the way so others can come with you. Mm-hmm. Taking that responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think we're at the point we're going to begin to wrap up here. So my question for you, for both of you, is if there are women listening who are considering leading with impact, what would you say to them to help them sort of discern if this is right for them?
I would say, don't hesitate. I mean, it is the type of program where you do have to work at it. It's not like an infomercial or 3 sessions of an online video. You actually have to work at it, and you learn so much about yourself. You grow, and it's not just like one and done. You learn things and get access to tools and ways of thinking that only help you develop further and take on different roles, different transitions, different accomplishments, and it applies throughout your career. So I can't say enough good things about it, my view, Peg, is, it helped me in the beginning to get to a place to jump off, and has continued to help me grow and develop since that time.
Great. Yeah. Maggie, what about you?
Leading with Impact, it's the core, it's the program to do. Just sign up now. Talking to email, sign up now. But here's the thing, you have to invest. You have to commit yourself to it. You have to do the exercises that are recommended, and do your homework and come to the sessions and authentically, and as you use your coaching, your offline coaching support to your advantage, use it. There's an investment here, and if you don't use it, the only person to blame is yourself.
Right.
And so these are trained professionals that are excellent at what they do. They know how to talk to you to get you to where you are trying to go, the goals you're trying to achieve. It's a program that is unique. I have not seen it anywhere else. Sign up today. Really.
Great.
And I would say too, Peg, if there are people out there in corporate positions who have the ability to tune into these programs on a corporate-wide basis, this is really the type of program to have your women leaders access in the company, throughout your company. And if you're a woman leader, get your female direct reports involved early, because it can only help them develop as they move up the chain in the company, and as they develop as women and as leaders. So it's definitely something to consider on a broad scale.
Well, thank you so much for both of you for those glowing endorsements. We so appreciate that. It's always, great to feel like we've had the impact that we want to have with the folks who participate. Beth, any final thoughts from you before we close out today?
Yes, I'd like to just, I've been keeping, every time you guys touched on a characteristic of leadership that not only do you embody, but that we actually teach, encourage, pull out inside of Leading with Impact. So it's a pretty long list, but I'm just going to read, like, this is the, the version of my robo leader, like my ideal leader, right? They take risk. They're courageous. They're relationship oriented. They're involved. They've got involved, and they're inclusive. They take personal responsibility. They've got really great awareness of who they are and who they're not. Confident, vulnerable, ongoing growth and development. That's what you guys are as leaders. We thank you for trusting us with actually helping to weave some of that. But clearly, you guys are doing such phenomenal things in the world. We're just grateful that you used Leading with Impact as a springboard.
Yes, and I want to extend my thanks as well to both of you for joining us today and really enlightening the conversation around leadership development as a total conversation, because it's a conversation for everyone. Sharing where you've been and how you've gotten to where you are, and really by example demonstrating that continuous lifelong learning path that both of you are on, which is something that we certainly endorse as well. And then really helping to illuminate what your experience in Leading with Impact was. I mean, Beth and I, as part of the co-creators of the program, certainly have ideas about that, but it's always terrific when folks who have participated actually can lend their experience and really shed light on what was so beneficial for you. So I can't thank you enough for that. So I want to also thank anyone who is joining us live or listening to this later. You can find us on our Facebook page and also go to www.tiara-leadership.com. We do these every single week. If you're interested, if we've piqued your interest and you want to know more about the Leading with Impact program, please don't hesitate to leave a comment on the Facebook page or reach out to Beth or I directly. We're happy to have a conversation and really explore whether Leading with Impact feels like the right program for you. So we look forward to seeing everybody next week. Thanks again for joining us and hope you have a great weekend. Bye-bye, everyone.